So hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will get started. And I will start by having a quick introduction of Skåne Startups and what we do. So Skåne Startup is a startup community support organization based in Malmö in Skåne region. And our story started back in 2015 when a few of the Swedish entrepreneurs, they wanted to create an environment where entrepreneurs like them can become even more successful. So they have been started, organizing many different events, connecting founders with the founders and the founders with the investors. And because we believe to build a vibrant tech ecosystem, connectiveness is one of the key ingredients. And this is why we're here today. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Yes. So, and one of the key objectives we have at the Skåne Startup is actually connect the most ambitious founders here from Southern Sweden to Swedish investor and global investors. And so I'm very happy that the Fabian from Norrsken joining us today. And we have two amazing co-hosts with us, Rita from Tetra Pak and Amanda from VEQ VC. Maybe Rita and Amanda, you can start with a quick intro of what you guys do. And then I will hand over the mic to Fabian.
For sure. I can start. My name is Rita Lousa. I'm originally from Portugal, but proudly living in Skåne for 3 years now. I'm the innovation driver at Tetra Pak Processing Systems. So I'm working with the future of food and food processing. And at the same time, I'm also the impact officer for Global Shapers Malmö, an NGO based in Malmö and a spin-off of the World Economic Forum. And nice to meet you all.
Great. So yeah, my name is Amanda Enoksson, and I work at both Ventures and VEC, you could say, that I represent here today. My background is that we are a sweat equity investor and now a VC as well, and that started out in Stockholm, and they are now opening up in Skåne as well. So just establishing and really interested to meet with new startups that are in different phases, mostly tech startups, but also others that we can give some input to, hopefully. And my role in the company is basically to meet with many of the startups that get in the pipeline, of course, but also once we get started working together, since we are more of an operative investor, I work very close together with the companies as well in the long run, trying to help out with whatever needs that you have. So yeah, short about me.
Thank you so much. Now I will hand over the floor to Fabian. Would love to know a little bit about Norrsken and what you do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jenny. And really glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I'll start with a few words on myself, and then I'll move into the more interesting part, which is Norrsken. But I've been working here now for 1.5 years. I actually come from Lund originally, and I'm actually a high school friend of Amanda, which is a great coincidence. And then also the Tetra Pak is a very close to my heart as well as a Lundensare. But I moved to Chalmers, where I studied for a while, and also got the opportunity to move to do an exchange in Berkeley, where I got to dip my toes in the whole Silicon Valley craziness and started my interest for startups. But then I've been working at Boston Consulting Group in Stockholm, doing the typical management consulting. Left because I didn't find it was a super good school, but I didn't find the motivation in the work that I wanted. So that's when Norrsken launched the bigger fund 1.5 years ago. I was very eager to join. And let's go over to Norrsken. I'm trying to view or show a few slides, Jenny. I don't know if that is possible or if I should voice it over. It says that host has disabled the screen sharing.
Yeah, let me try to. Yeah, maybe you can start. Yes. I'm sorry, we're trying to fix that.
No worries. Yeah, Norrsken was originally founded in 2016 by one of the co-founders to Klarna, Niklas Adelbert. And what his whole mission was to enable impact entrepreneurs to thrive in society and become what we call the rock stars of the future. Because the problems that we are facing becomes more and more complex, and the traditional methods to solve them isn't enough, is what we think. So therefore, we need impact entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs that tries to tackle these problems, and they need all the help they can get. So with this mission, he set up Norrsken, based on 3 pillars. So one being a big co-working space where we sit in Stockholm normally. We host 450 entrepreneurs typically on a normal non-COVID day, and that it is going forward. And there we also try to build up a hub for impact entrepreneurship, in the meaning that we host a lot of events. We try to gather all the thought leaders there and try to be that like hub in the ecosystem around impact entrepreneurship. But then we also do a lot of initiatives that are maybe not as investable as the ones we will talk about later. But those are things like carbon weighted accounting, where we, for example, or impact weighted accounting, where we, for a week or 2 ago, launched a list of the 100 top companies in Sweden in terms of size and what the impact they actually have per revenue unit. So that's like things that is not investable, but there are still initiatives that are hosted by the broader Norrsken umbrella. But then what we really focus on is then investment, or what I focus on. And this was set up first 4 years ago with a smaller fund. It was a 25 million euro fund that was funded by some of the Swedish unicorn founders, because back then it wasn't as easy as it is now to say that, hey, I will do impact. And we tried knocking on the big investors' door saying, would you like to be part of this movement? We're going to do both impact and profits. And they said like, wow, that's a great initiative, but please do it with someone else's money, because I don't dare to spend my money on that kind of premises. But I think for these years that we've been out on the market, not only was the first fund successful, but I think the whole momentum in society has shifted. And now impact is really something that is investable. So in late 2019, we were able to raise our second fund, which is now a 125 million euro impact fund. It's backed by the normal LPs, so the normal players that typically back all the other only financially driven funds, but with the premises that we only invest in impact companies. And we define impact companies as anything that can take us closer to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which means that we invest in everything from healthcare to education, but then also a lot in climate and social inclusion. And we also say that for every unit of revenue that the companies that we invest in create, they should also create 1 unit of impact, whatever that impact can be. And we also hold ourselves accountable to it. So our financial returns as a team are not only reliant on the financial returns we do with our investments, but also the impact we create with our investments, which is really good to see that we have a great mission alignment throughout the team and also with the companies that we invest in. We have to date invested in 27 companies throughout a few different themes. And I would say, if I can highlight a few, I would say that we have done a lot in the food and food waste industry in companies like Matsmart, Karma in Sweden. We invested in Olio in UK, and but also Stockel Dreamery, now the latest. So that is like a big cluster, but then we've also invested quite a lot in electrification in the climate tech space, where we invested in Northvolt, in Enride out of Gothenburg, which does autonomous electric trucks. We've invested in Heart Aerospace that does electric airplanes, but also battery software companies called Nordical. So we have, these are like 2 areas that we have. I don't know if we've intentionally focused on them, but there we've seen a lot of opportunities. But then we have, as you might understand, we have a lot of other themes across all the SDGs. And when we look at companies, we look at 4 different things. It's first of all, the impact. So that's like the first criteria. Is this positive impact? Is it high enough impact? Is the impact fast enough? And does it really solve a big problem? That is like the first lens when we screen the companies that comes to us. Then we also focus on companies that has a great scalability, so that they can be scalable in a very capital efficient way and become massive companies, because that's also when you create a massive impact. Then we have a tendency to invest in mainly tech companies, and you can define tech companies as many different things. But we want to have at least a tech-focused business model, because that also brings a higher scalability in most cases. And then in terms of stage and geography, we invest in seed and Series A stage. For us, that means that we invest €500,000 to €3 million in the initial ticket. And we can be both a co-investor, a lead investor, or a co-lead investor. And we invest all across Europe for now. We also then trying to venture outside of Europe with a few investments. But of course, our home market is still Sweden, and that's where we see also a lot of opportunities. Cool. Anything I missed, Jenny, that you think I should bring up?
Yeah, Fabian, I just want to know that you can present now if there's more slides you would like to present.
No worries.
Yes.
I think I covered what's on the slides, and maybe it's more fun to keep it like this in person.
Yeah. So for the next 30 minutes, we will have a Q&A session. So all founders and co-hosts, feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And after that, we will jump into the founders pitch, and each founder will have 5 minutes to pitch, and the co-host will have 5 minutes to ask questions. But then I will start with my first question then, that you invest in startups solving the world's biggest problems right now, but what do you think are the world's biggest problems at the moment?
Yeah, it's a big question.
And also you mentioned that the startup should be building a massive business. So what do you mean by massive business?
Yeah. If we start with the second one, a massive business is we want to create impact, what we call impact unicorns. And that means companies that does not only become a financial unicorn, meaning that you're valued to $1 billion, but also that you impact 1 billion people's lives in a positive way. So that's what we call a massive company, both financially and then impact-wise. And then to your other question, that is a much harder to answer on the world's biggest problems. But of course, we see today the whole climate change being both a massive problem on its own, but then also creating a lot of problems in the surroundings in terms of health, in terms of decent living standards, clean water, and so on. So that is, of course, one of the biggest out there. But then we also see a big problem with social inclusion, and people with the global world that we now have. People also feel more lost in that new era. So that is also another problem that is super interesting to find solutions to, and very important. But it's hard to say that one, and that's also why many impact funds only focus on one vertical. Say we are a healthcare fund, or we are a climate tech fund. But we think it's hard for us to say, like, yes, as long as we solve climate, then everything is fine. So we want to be a bit more general there and say that we want to promote companies across all the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
And everybody feel free to click raise your hand and ask any questions. Are there any questions? Oh, Rita, please go ahead.
Hi, Fabian. Thank you so much for the presentation. My question is actually not related to startups, and I hope it's okay. But you were referring that you basically believe in Norrsken that the startups that you invest in have to have a power of scalability. And many times we could argue that incumbents in certain industries have a great power to scale solutions that have a greater impact. Like on your side, I know that you referred as well this list of the climate impact versus business unit or monetary unit. On your side, do you see any more things that you could drive or help support to change incumbents on their journey to create more impact?
Yeah, great question, and I 100% agree that the big incumbents are as needed in this journey towards the challenges. And I think one way that we typically work with the big corporations is that we try to engage them with the startups that we invest in and the startups in our ecosystem. because it's often in the combination of someone that is forward thinking and doesn't see limitations in the bigger sphere. And if you couple that with a big organization that has the knowledge, the industry know-how, and so on, I think that is a great opportunity. So that is one way that we, in most cases, work with our startups. And it's actually quite fascinating to look at the European scene, because the Swedish big corporations have come much further than in many other European countries. So just taking the investments that we do outside of Sweden and couple them with the contacts that we have in the Swedish industry sector, that has been a very good combination in many cases, because they then can see new solutions together. So I say, me particularly, Norrsken, the other Norrsken team that does the more events and the social networking, or not social network, but the networking and so on, they are more entangled or focused directly on the industry as well. But that's how we, with the VC arm, try to also engage with the industry network. That is very powerful, especially in Sweden.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the impact assessment framework that your team is using. Would you please elaborate a little bit more of how do you use the assessment framework when you're evaluating startups?
Yes, let me see if I can find it to actually pull it up, because I think it's quite good to explain. Can I present now, Shani? Let's see.
Yes, I think so.
Let's see. Nope, doesn't seem right. Okay, here we go. Just finding through all my. Here. Can you see this one? Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is what we call our impact assessment framework. And this is on the left-hand side is what we call the theory of change, where you try to lay out your vision, what challenge you're solving, and then what the solution you have, how that tackles that challenge. And we look at input, output, and outcome in this part. But then we also try to, because since we are so impact agnostic, we try to rate it, even though this is not at all scientific and we don't claim it to be. But at least we want to do something to cover that we have looked at all the different parts of impact assessment. So first we look at the severity of the challenge. Is this a big challenge, or is this a smaller, maybe more like a luxurious challenge? Then we look at the intensity of the effect. So does this really solve the challenge, or is it marginal improvement? Here you can think about, like, do we make a petrol engine 5% more efficient? Is that really solving the problem, or is that a marginal effect on the problem? It can still be very big if you do it at scale. Then we have the volume of the effect and how many effects. And here comes the impact unicorn part in a little bit. This is, of course, harder when you do climate and CO2, because it's so fluffy. It's not directly impacting that many people, but like indirectly, by reducing the climate footprint, you actually do affect a lot of people. Then who do we affect? Is it a well-served community? So is it for me, and does it solve a small problem for me? Then it's maybe not as important as if it solves a big problem for someone in a worse position or situation. And how long-term is the effect? Is the duration of effect? Then time to effect, which I think is super interesting, because we are running out of time, especially on the climate problem. So to have a solution that is very powerful, but it takes 30, 40 years until it's on the market, or until its effect is reached, is less interesting. And then how big is the contribution? And then the last part, which we often, or where we spend a lot of time, is the impact risks, because it's quite rarely that it's only positive impact. It often has side effects, and you have to look at the bigger picture and then try to weight the impact and make sure that it's net positive, at least on one or a few parameters. So this is the assessment that we do for all the companies. And as I said in the beginning, it's not not scientific, but it's at least something. And we think it works very well to use on the multiple different areas that we look at.
Sounds very good. And regarding that, because I know that your team also work with companies and you actually set relevant impact KPIs. How do you work with, how do you do that with your portfolio companies and in terms of actually setting the impact KPI for them? And do you do like monthly evaluation for the startups?
Yeah, we set out, when we have done this assessment and we are doing the investments, we do what we call an impact workshop with all the companies that we invest in, where we define impact KPIs that should be easy to measure. They should be tangible and they should have a real impact. But we don't want to, here again, many people talk about impact is so hard to measure, but that's, and I agree with that, but that is why we try to simplify it as much as possible and only invest in companies where the impact is so embedded to the business model, so that often you can actually take the impact out of the revenue, if you say so. But we don't do that. But say we have, for example, NRI that I mentioned as an example. Our impact KPI there is number of kilometers driven in an electric truck. And what would that impact be if that instead would have been driven in a diesel truck? And then that is the impact KPI that we measure and we follow up every quarter. Then we have set out targets initial or prior to the investment that we communicate to all the investors in our funds, all the LPs. And if we don't reach those targets, we don't get any financial benefit from those investments, but that benefit is instead then donated to charity. Because we don't want, that's also why we don't want companies where you can take out the impact. The impact needs to be embedded into the business model. Because if you can take out the impact, if you can become a unicorn without becoming an impact unicorn, then it's not a company for us.
Alexander, you have a question.
Yes, hi, thank you for the introduction. So I'm wondering how, you partly answered the question now in your answer, but how do you relate the financial part to the impact part? Like, is it from different from case to case, or do you always have like, we need this amount of climate impact or this amount of impact and we need this amount of return of investment?
Thank you, Alexander, for another very good question, because I know a lot of climate tech funds especially has like every investment we do needs to have the potential to reduce the CO2 by 0.5 gigaton, 250 million ton CO2 and so on. We haven't set out those kind of targets so far, mainly because the impact that we do is so, as I said, like through so many different industries. And like comparing one to the other would be quite hard. So we don't have that set targets. And if you then look at the financial return potential versus the impact potential, we never say like, okay, this has a slightly higher impact, so then we can live with the slightly lower financial potential. We always say, first, it has to have big impact, and then we can start looking at the financial case. And if that holds up like a normal VC would look at it, then it's a great investment for us. But it's never a trade-off between impact and investment or a financial return. And that's, again, coming back to that, the impact needs to be embedded into the business model. So like the greater financial return you do, the greater impact you also do. I don't know if is that an answer to your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, just to follow on that, I'm curious that how do you deal with the situation that when the portfolio companies can bring great financial returns, but they fail to reach their impact KPIs?
Yeah, so far we are lucky that that hasn't been the case. So let's see. But what we at least try to assess before every investment is that it should be impossible to get to great financial returns without generating the great impact. because it has to be entangled into the business. So that's why I think it's less likely that that will be the case. But of course, it can happen, and then let's see how we deal with it. But the framework is that if companies create great financial returns without an impact, we don't get any benefit as a team from that investment. So that is how it works, and that's why we also, in every boardroom we sit and all of that, we always try to make sure that they don't derail from the impact that they are set out to create. And so far, it hasn't been a problem at all. Rather the opposite, that companies realize how powerful it is to be an impact company, both in terms of recruitment, in terms of marketing, and they instead almost become more impact driven over time when we have invested. So yeah, I hope I never can answer that question, Shani, but let's see in the future.
And I think this question might be relevant for the founders in our panel, is that you talk about more people are aware of this, and we see the report from your website that the young people are willing to take 50% of pay cut in order to work for impactful companies, or consumers are more willing to pay more when it comes to if it's a sustainable product. So my question for you is that how do you think the founders here today can leverage that when it comes to track better talents to join the team, and also leverage that to bring more value to the consumers?
Yeah, and I 100% believe in that. That's the case for me, at least. I started at Norrsken not because it was great salary or anything like that, but rather that I got the chance to work with impact. And I think that is the case for many, especially in Sweden. So I think you should really, if you are an impact company, you should really brag about it. Make that the first thing that pops out on your website. Make that what stands out in the ad when you recruit, and also make that something that you speak to your potential customers about. Because I think we're moving more and more towards a world where consumers are less worried about, especially in Sweden, we're so privileged here that we're less worried about the financials. So we actually want to also create an impact with what we consume. So both for consumers, but then also if you work B2B with the big corporations. I know, Rita, probably you can talk for Tetra Pak, but you're probably also assessing the impact of all the investments you do, because also the big companies knows that they have to become more sustainable to be long-term financially viable. So I think it's absolute. It's a very good competitive advantage if you can communicate your impact both to potential employees and to customers. And we actually saw that we did this impact regarding the impact KPIs. We released an annual report of how much impact all of our portfolio of companies had created. And at first we were quite hesitant. I thought the portfolio companies would be, they would probably not like us to expose their impact. It can like business sensitive information and so on, but rather the opposite. They have used the metrics and put them on their website and say, hey, we have reduced 500 tons of CO2 this year. We have saved this many lives, XYZ. And that is really powerful as a brand building, both for consumers and potential recruits.
Are there any questions from the panel? Yeah, that will address one question from the audience that it says, we are aware of Norrsken seeking significant entry into the African space, Rwanda. Can you elaborate on what is driving this interest and how are you dealing with the potential risk? Yes.
Yeah. First of all, a caveat that I'm not responsible for the expansion to Rwanda, so I don't know all the details or the latest, but I'm more than happy to speak about what we're doing there. So what we're currently doing is that we're setting up a Norrsken house in Kigali in Rwanda, which looks like a really cool place. It will be a super cool place where it's even bigger than the one in Stockholm. And there we will try to host, we'll try to do what we have done in Stockholm, to build an impact entrepreneurship hub for East Africa. And that is something that is a little bit lacking in the area. And I think it can be a really, really great place to be. So we're setting up the co-working space, opening hopefully this year. There's been some delays due to COVID, but it's hopefully opening sometime now during the fall. We're also planning to host a lot of events and so on. And now actually also in the talks of raising a VC fund for the African market. This will be a slightly later stage and slightly bigger then, because that's where we've seen the greatest gap in the market from like this kind of growth funding. There is quite a lot of early stage funding in the African tech market, but this growth step before you can do even bigger rounds, that's where we've seen a gap. So we're currently in discussions to raise that fund, and that's what we're doing. And regarding the risks, I don't know exactly what you're thinking about here, but it is there is, of course, there is less of a societal framework around how you create business in these areas that you always have to be aware of. But I'm probably not knowledgeable about enough to speak about all the risks that are out there. I can definitely follow up if there are any specific interest on that topic.
This sounds super exciting because we do have a founder here today with us. She's starting a business in Sweden, but the market is towards the African market. I would love to hear more about that later, Jan. But yes, I have one more question, which also relevant to founders here today, is that in comparison with the traditional VC fund, what kind of a different support would you be able to offer for founders?
Yeah, no, so coming back to what I spoke about before, like being able to help with that impact, both impact assessment, impact measurement, and then impact communication is something that we have done a lot for all the portfolio companies. And what we also have seen is powerful is that that like Norrsken investment can work as some kind of stamp of approval that this is an impact business, and that is really powerful in many cases. And then thirdly, and maybe most importantly, given that we have this a little bit of an unfair advantage of being part of a much bigger ecosystem than many other funds, we have a very broad network, both in Sweden, outside of Sweden, now also in Africa, and that all of our portfolio companies make great use of, and that we are more than happy to connect all the founders in our portfolio to.
And when it comes to a approach, Norrsken asking for seed investment, what are the common mistakes you see founders make?
Interesting question. I think one, if like Swedish founders are a bit, I wouldn't say restricted, but I think sometimes we think a little bit too much about only the Swedish market. And you should really already at the seed stage, if seeking VC capital, think about how this will solve a bigger problem, because if it's a problem in Sweden, it's typically a problem outside of Sweden as well. And then think about the more European or global opportunities. That is one, especially for Swedish companies. Then also, I think you shouldn't, like regarding the impact, you should not neglect the risks and rather be upfront with them, because sometimes when we see decks and we see they try to position themselves as impact companies, but it's quite obvious that there are great risks with this venture. We get a little bit put off. So I think that is something that you shouldn't neglect, and you should be upfront and how you can mitigate it, because there's often always a way to mitigate these risks. Yeah, and then be even braver in your visions and your ambitions. Be bold and learn from the American world, where they oversell and take it halfway, and then you have a great pitch, I think.
Yeah, I would love to get Amanda's view on this, because with many of the founders, at least I work in the community, is that they're very, very careful. They would want to test this in Sweden, the Swedish market first, and then probably go to some other Nordic market. And what is your view on this, Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, we invest very early stage usually, and I would definitely say like, of course, you don't have to start with the Swedish market. I think what we encourage a lot is definitely that make sure that you have your eyes set on a specific like group of users or people initially, and make sure to validate with them first, no matter if I would say if it's in Sweden or if it's somewhere else. So I would say that's the most important thing, to not go like too broad or to scale too fast before you have validated with the right user group, and make sure that it's the right user group that you're validating with and not someone else. But then I think definitely like as soon as you have validated and if you've done it in the right way, then you have the right foundation to scale quickly. And then I don't see any problems in many cases to scale globally fast. But yeah, make sure that you have the foundation set first, and spend more time and money than you think on that so that once you scale, you can do it more effectively.
Yeah, Irene, you have a question.
Hello, thank you for the great insights so far. I've seen that doing my research on Norrsken, I see that you have the policy of radical transparency, and like whoever wants can go to your website and see like blueprints of what you have done, why you're doing it, strategies, manuals, the sustainability questionnaire. And I was wondering, like, what made you to decide to adopt this kind of open and transparent approach, and what kind of challenges did you face with this approach? And should VCs have this similar approach?
Very happy that you asked. Yeah, we have it was a very conscious decision about a year ago that we want to be radically transparent. Because the overarching goal for Norrsken is not to become we don't want to become the sole impact VC out there that does great impact investments, and nor would Norrsken House want to be the only impact hub in Europe or in the world. But we rather see like if we want to create as big impact as we possibly can, then we want to be super successful so that everyone wants to do the same. And then we should make it as easy as possible for everyone to copy whatever they want. So we have, as you said, openly shared all the documents that we have, everything from employee agreements to like his setup of the foundation and so on, to the limit where we can't legally disclose it for external parties. So I think that is very important for us to be that transparent so that we can facilitate the broader change in society. When the night that we launched it, I can say that especially our more senior management team was very nervous about what the outcome would be. But so far there has only been positive reactions, no backlashes in terms of oh, how can you do it like this? This is not scientific enough, nothing like that, but only the opposite. So I think it's super powerful. I would urge everyone that can to do it. Of course, it's hard if you're a startup that's trying to build a very, I understand that you can't disclose everything, and we don't disclose it. Don't be worried if you want to become a Norrsken company, you don't have to disclose all your secrets. It's only for our organization. But I think for other funds, for especially those that wants to create bigger impact, I think it's a very powerful way to disclose more. And I think also for bigger corporations, even though they can't disclose everything, I think it's important to be more transparent so that we can create change.
Thank you.
But, can I ask a follow-up? Would you like to have a more scientific approach, like long-term?
Of course, there's, if possible, both from the science point of view, but also from a more practical point of view, we of course want to do the best we can in terms of measurement of impact and so on. The impact weighted accounts that this foundation has set out to do together with Harvard is a very good start, where they try to, it's like the accounting standards that was implemented in the early 90s in the US, so that everyone has to show the net debt and the revenue and so on and so on. They want to do the same, but for impact, so that you can actually weight the impact towards the external effects of what you do in the company. And they developed that together with a really cool research group at Harvard. We, of course, want to implement that to the highest extent we can. Even the scientists at Harvard has a very hard time it's not a simple matter. And especially when you are dealing with smaller startups that don't have that kind of reporting in-house, it is a bit harder. So we want to do it as well as we can with still being practical. So we are constantly trying to develop our impact reporting. And we, as I said, we released the first impact report publicly for 2020. We'll do the second one that hopefully is even better for this year, and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Fabian. There's a question from the audience that the change in billions of people's life is possible relatively easier when the business operates in highly populated countries such as India. Have you considered any investment in India to help many underprivileged people there?
Yeah, 100% true. So far, we have a European focus on the fund. We can, however, do the opportunistic investments outside of Europe. This is mainly due to the lack of market knowledge that we have in India or in broader Asia or even in the US, where we see that we have less capabilities to assess the investments, because even though we want to create a massive impact, we still also need to do financially smart investments. And without a good market knowledge, this is much harder. But I would love to invest in an Indian startup that have a positive impact on the billions of people that live there. So far, we have found it hard, but who knows where the next Norrsken hub will be, and maybe there will be an Indian or a Southeast Asian fund like the one we have created in Africa.
Yeah, thank you. Another question from the audience is that does Norrsken have, or are you developing a network of cooperations looking at the corporate venturing, specifically focused on ESG? Is it this is also particularly for developing proof of concept across given focused industries?
Yeah, we are collaborating with quite a few of the corporate ventures out there. I wouldn't say that it's a specific network, but what we work a lot with is our network regarding in the broader industries, not only with the CVCs, but more the actual customers, so not the investors, but rather the management teams or whoever that can be in that organization. We try to really build that network out, because that is how we think we can create the most value for our portfolio companies. So that we can, if someone wants to test a new sustainable material for clothing, we should have someone at H&M that we can connect them with, so that they can develop that proof of concept together. So maybe not as structured with the CVCs or the corporate ventures, but more like the broader corporations.
Yeah, so everybody, we have 5 minutes more before we jump into the founders pitching. Anybody have more questions? Okay, I have more questions. Then I think I watched one of your colleagues' presentation, and she talked about that today less than 1% of capital is invested into companies that address impact through their business models. However, tech is better funded than ever. And what do you think are the reasons?
Yeah, I think this is like when I talked about the ripple effect of being not just us being successful, but rather seeing more capital being allocated to this part of to this asset class. I think that is what we talk about. And the 1% is that we need $7 trillion to fund the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so far we have reached 1% of that. The impact funds that are out there are popping up like never before. So this number is increasing fast, which is great. But still it's a long way to go. I think some of the reasons for that is that the more traditional capital is still a bit hesitant. They still, because when we go out and look for capital, they often have a a separate bucket of their fund or whatever they call it, that okay, this part of our fund we can allocate to impact investing, but then the big majority is still for what they call normal investing. And I think for us for this gap to be bridged, we have come a long way in turning impact investing something that you can do with a financially good, a good outcome. But now we also need to turn it to the new normal. So like it shouldn't be part of your family office's fund that is focused on impact. It should be, hey, we have our family office fund. All we do is impact because that is the best asset class that is out there. I think that is the transition that needs to happen, and I think it will.
Lucas, you have a question.
Yes, it's nice to hear about your perspective or Norrsken's perspective. It sounds like you're ahead of your time, and it would be interesting to hear where this comes from. Like, where does this mentality, who's the driving force for this, or initially?
Yeah, of course, Niklas, with his founding ambitions, is and was the initiator and is still the driving force. And I think he has inspired a mentality where we should never be complacent. We should always try to take it one step further, both in terms of just trying to still push the curve even faster. But then also, like for us as an impact VC, of course, we want to create all the other impact VCs fund, but we also want to be the one driving that change and being the front runner. And we can't stand back and say, hey, we are satisfied. We have a decent sized fund and we're doing good investments. We still want to push the boundaries all the time. And I think Niklas initiated that mindset, and that has he's still very active in the organization and in the fund and continuing to always push us. But that has then rippled down through the whole organization. And also it's quite nice when we of course are a fund with external money that we need to take very good care of. But the foundation part, or the ones that runs the house, that runs all the events and so on, they are a non-profit foundation. So they don't have any other stakeholders than themselves. And therefore they can be quite bold in what they do and how they communicate.
Thank you. Rita, you have a question.
Yes, I have one extra question. So I've been working quite recently with some projects connected with the UN United Nations Game Changers Lab, and that meant that I ended up meeting a lot of entrepreneurs from different countries and different realities. And one thing we've discovered during research and interviews with different stakeholders in the industry is that even though there's a lot of investment and recently impact investment in startups in the area, for instance, of food and nutrition, mostly those startups are creating products that are not fitting the needs of the underserved populations, like for instance when it comes to healthy diets. So either they are with products with a high price point, or that are not targeting for instance bottom of the pyramid. So I was wondering what would be your suggested next steps for founders that are actually in this area where they are trying to serve these populations, and what would be your advice?
It's a super tough problem, and I really recognize it as well, because to be honest, many of the financially driven investments are in the higher GDP economies, because that is where the most capital is. I wouldn't say that we are perfect here, but we try to, when we looked at that impact scale, we both look at for whom this solves a problem and for how many. So that is something that we try to take with us into every investment that we do. For example, we invested in a cell-grown fish company called Blue Bioscience, and we chose them partly because they're a super good team, but then they're very big, or their ambition is very clear, that they want to create cell-grown fish, not for the luxurious sushi restaurants in inner city Stockholm, but rather for the mass markets out there at a very affordable price in the long term. That is their main vision, and that's part of why we thought they were much more interesting than others that are more focused on creating niche products for wealthy economies. To the founders out there, I think when serving that bottom of the pyramid, I think you need to be very diligent in how you build up your business model and how you monetize that business model. We've invested in, for example, WeFarm, that is a farmer community for Africa. They have been very smart in how they both communicate with all of their users and how they then try to monetize them by not saying like, hey, you should pay this subscription fee every month to be able to be part of the community, but rather only monetize on things that actually drives value to them. So for example, they monetize their marketplace, which is like a farmer goods that actually increases the output of the yield, and then they can monetize that, which also brings more value to the farmers. So you should really think about the business model when you serve this community.
Thank you for the great answer and all the good questions. And now we'll start with the founder's pitch. And Alexander, feel free to share your presentation. And so each founder will have 5 minutes, and the Fabian, Rita, and the Amanda, feel free to ask any questions or offer any feedback.
Great, thank you so much, Jenny. Right. There we go. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nordon, and we're building an AI tool for climate optimization of construction projects. The construction industry accounts for 10% of global CO2 emissions, and in Sweden, that's 21%. But this can be heavily reduced by calculating and testing all combinations of structures and construction materials for each individual project. The problem is that these calculations needed to optimize the climate impact are very complex and take a lot of time from already hard to meet deadlines, and therefore becomes a bottleneck in the construction process, which hinders the project from reducing the climate impact. And solving this issue is a two-step process. First, we must make it easier for all construction companies to declare their emissions with the market's easiest climate calculation tool, which both project managers and construction engineers can use without any training. This makes the entire industry live up to the law on climate declaration from 2022 and generate huge amounts of climate data. This is our MVP and was released in June, and next version will be released in October. So these declarations open up for huge amounts of annotated data from the entire industry, which was not available before. This means that we can track which choices in the construction process have led to higher or lower climate impact in relation to cost and production time. This data is later fed into our machine learning module, which learns from past projects how to achieve the building criteria with the lowest possible emissions by recommending structures and construction materials that suit the criteria and parameters of the building that's going to be built. That way, 30% of CO2 emissions can be reduced from a project, with an average saving of 20,000 euros on consultancy costs, and that's only the direct costs, and save approximately 3 months on the construction process, which will save even more money. And the industry is pressured to change fast from 3 different directions. From 2022, there will be a law for all construction companies to declare their climate impact for every project. And there's even plans on maximum limits for how much CO2 a building can emit per square meter. Clients are forcing the construction companies to heavily reduce their climate impact in order to win procurements and actually get deals. And real estate investors want to reduce risk in their investments by investing in sustainable real estate projects. So in 2021, we released our MVP and we made our first sale for 3,000 euro to Hemsö. They are our pilot partner that we interview and prototype with every other week to better understand their needs. And we have a dialogue with 8 other construction companies to have pilot projects with. One of them is Skanska. Skanska started building their first climate neutral building and was interested in using our software to reach the climate goals more efficiently. And they're going to decide on that in March 2022. And after having Sweco as a consulting partner, they decided to terminate our contract simply because they thought Nordon was too big of a competitor against their consultancy service, because we are automating the same calculations that they are charging consultancy hours for. So a basic license to our platform costs 500 euros per user per year, and mainly helps smaller construction companies comply with the law on the climate declaration. Our expert license costs 3,000 euros per year per user and provides recommendations on how to actively reduce emissions. In addition, our clients pay €1 per square meter for each project they declare. So just to give you an understanding of the size, 10 million square meters were built last year in Sweden alone. So the total market size is about 22 billion euros based on the number of square meters built and construction companies on the global market, and it's growing very fast at about 4.2% annually. And when we focus on the market in Europe and North America, it's worth about 600 million euros. And over the next 5 years, we'll focus primarily on the Nordic countries and EU countries, where we see a market of 10 million euros that we can obtain, which is also expected to grow rapidly with increasing legislation and customer requirements. So this is our team. Co-founders are me and Joel. I have run my own company with focus on construction and real estate industry and have 6 years of experience in selling to the industry. Joel is a design engineer with 13 years of experience in building digital products for both startups and industrial companies. And our team is a great mix of backgrounds from both the construction and tech industries with a total of 65 years of experience. So we're looking for an investment of 400,000 euro to get our second version of the product to the market and finish building our AI module that will make a major innovation in the global construction industry's climate work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Fabian, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Really interesting. Tackling the construction industry is not easy, but it's a very well needed.
Absolutely.
Maybe the first question is on the pricing. You said that the typical project puts like 20k euros and then 3 months delay or 3 months time due to getting these metrics. With your pricing model, I didn't really get how would you compare your pricing per project compared to that 20k? Like how much is the savings?
On an average project, we would charge approximately 10,000 euros for the project, and then we would charge for the users that are using the product as well. So an average enterprise, this is for the enterprise size clients, the average ARR for an enterprise client is about 900,000 euros a year. And there are about 50 to 70 of these in Sweden right now. And on the small medium enterprise, which is the smaller construction companies that only want right now, they only want to declare their emissions. There are about 7,000 of them in Sweden, but we're hoping to get them started on the basic license and then convert them to the expert license when they want to reduce their climate impact.
Cool. And maybe relating to that question, how much of the market pull would you say is driven by like climate change, wanting to do something good, and how much is driven by regulatory demands, and then lastly, how much is driven by just cost savings?
That's a very good question. A lot is driven about them wanting to get deals because it's becoming very hard for the companies that don't have active climate reduction to actually get new jobs, which is becoming a big problem for a lot of these really big companies. So I would say that it's very driven from the growth of their business because it's becoming critical for their survival to actually win procurements. So they need to show both how much impact the building will be doing, which they can calculate with our tool, but also to show that they are actively reducing it in order to actually get jobs.
Cool. Last question for me. How automated is the process now, and how do you think about that going forward? Like, how much manual input and onboarding do you need to do with the customers?
Actually, most software in the construction industry are very difficult to use. Many of the other software that we have looked at and used, they're not really products or SaaS platforms as we are maybe used to. They're more like systems. They look basically like Windows 95 and are not very user friendly, and you need to have a training program to be able to use them. Our product designer, Joel, has 13 years of experience in developing user-friendly digital products. So our product will be plug and play, basically. We're focusing on technology to the machine learning part that will automate all of the parts that a construction engineer don't need to be hands-on with, and the design part that anyone will be able to use the software in the construction company. You don't need to be a certified LCA specialist to be able to use this software. A project manager or project developer could use it just as easily.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, Amanda, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking, since we're talking about the product, I'm also really interesting about, I mean, it feels like a lot of your business model and your product is connected to your machine learning part. And I'm just wondering, like, as I understood it, then you have this law coming in next year saying that you need to share all this data, for example. So I'm just wondering, like, how far have you gotten with your current machine learning model? Like, is it well trained? Have you had enough data, or is that something that is a challenge going forward?
We actually integrated our first machine learning module last week. It was launched. So we are actually on our way to build it. That's just one small engine. We wanted to do the MVP stage of the machine learning function, but now we got it functioning and it works pretty well. I mean, it's going to get better with time as more data comes in. But that was a great experience and learning from us, and now we're going to make it grow it bigger and bigger, and that's what we're raising money for, to next October be able to launch the full AI module that will be able to recommend how you can actually save both time and money while building the project.
Okay, cool. And moving into then, like, the team that you have and that you're of course trying to or planning to expand. So the machine learning, is that something that you have in-house right now, like a committed team in-house doing it, or is it something that you're outsourcing but then hoping to bring into the company?
That's a great question. We have at the moment our AI team is only 2 people. One engineer and one AI project manager. The AI project manager is a construction engineer and is now focusing on AI. So she has a very good idea of the data needed and what the data is actually available and how it can be structured. And then we have the engineer actually training the module. But yeah, with this money, we're hoping to hire another engineer, but also a few other tech people that can build the product around it.
Yeah. Okay. But then, as I understand it, so the machine learning people that you have today are committed, like fully committed to Nodon right now, and going forward.
Well, we have they're both interns. Yeah, they're fully committed right now. But yeah, we need to have them on board, like signing a contract that they will stay for a long time and not only be interns. And that's why we're raising this round.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last question, Rita.
Hi, Alexander. Congratulations for your pitch. And I am very agnostic to this area, as you can understand by my profile. But I was very interested to learn about this law coming for climate accounting of buildings. So I was wondering if this product goes successfully and you manage to implement, and I understood that the law is in Sweden, like what would be your growth strategy? Do you see these legal requirements also happening elsewhere?
This new law in 2022 is in Sweden. In 2023, it's coming in Denmark, and Norway already has implemented it for government-owned buildings, but it's coming to all buildings within the next few years. And Netherlands have already implemented it. Great Britain is also on the way to implementing it. So there's happening a lot of things, mainly in EU and the European countries. So Sweden is actually in the forefront of this field. So if we get this product working in the Swedish market, then it will be a lot easier to expand to the Nordic countries, to the EU, and then move a bit further, since client demands and law requirements are becoming a lot more advanced and a lot more.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have any strong competition in other of these countries, like Norway, as you referred, already has the law and so on?
There are climate declaration tools that are coming up right now, but as we see it, that's not really the problem that the market has. I mean, they can hire just a consultant to just calculate how much CO2 this building has emitted. What doesn't exist is the climate optimization. They have no way of actually reducing the climate impact, which is going to be the next step. And that's simply because when they have all of this data, it's basically too much to process. And when you have a very short amount of time to process it, it just doesn't work. So that's why the industry is just like ignoring it instead. So yeah, it's becoming more hard to ignore for the industry.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to Simon from Scotch and Tom.
Thank you.
Feel free to start presenting the pitch.
Yes. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So yeah, hi, I'm Simon, and I will pitch together with my co-founder Tom, and together we founded Scotch, and our goal is to make cleaning sustainable, and more precisely to get rid of plastic waste. So we see plastic waste as a very fundamental problem in the world, and we decided to do something against it, and we are actually doing something. So this year we already saved over 50,000 of one-time use plastic bottles this year. And yeah, how we do this will be later, but we can maybe start from scratch. So what is the problem? The problem is when you go to the supermarket, this is what you usually see when you go into the cleaning aisle. And how I see it is that it's just 95% water wrapped in one-time use plastic waste. So because you throw the bottle away, it's working perfectly fine. And if you want to be more sustainable, you have to do inconvenient DIY solutions by mixing it yourself. So if you want to have a sustainable option, there is no real mass market solution yet. At the same time, 35% of the consumers are actively looking for plastic-free products. So there's kind of this tension in the market where there is a lack of supply, but an increasing demand. And that's what we saw. And yeah, this is where our solution basically comes in. And it's really simple as 1, 2, 3. So you start by taking our bottle, which is made from recycled plastic, and you just fill it up with the tap water you already have at home. Then you drop in a cleaning tablet, it dissolves within a couple of minutes, and then you just start our surface cleaning product like you would usually do. But as soon as the bottle is empty, you just fill it up again and drop in a new tablet. So no need to throw the plastic away. And by that, we can reduce all the plastic waste, basically. Yeah, we basically have 3 different products at the moment in the cleaning sector. So one is the bathroom cleaning tablet. We also have one for glass and mirror surfaces, and one for multi-purpose, which we mainly use in the kitchen. And we just recently launched the world's first active probiotic cleaning tablet, which cleans with a microorganism to enhance the cleaning effect over time. So yeah, what's sustainable about that, you might ask? So first of all, the major part where we concentrate is obviously to reduce the plastic waste. Yeah, by reusing instead of one-time using. We also managed to find a great balance between yeah, the use of eco-friendly ingredients while also maintaining a very competitive cleaning effect. We only use recyclable packaging or recycled materials. And because we don't have to ship any of this heavy water weight around the planet, we are also way more CO2 efficient. Right.
Yeah, and this is Tom now. Basically, our goal is to become impact unicorns, and we do this in several different ways. So first of all, of course, we focus very closely on the UN development goals, sustainable development goals. Primarily on the number 12, 14, and 13. So what Simon just mentioned, we try to reduce CO2 emissions, we get rid of all plastic waste. And it's important for us to mention that we go all the way. So we don't use any plastics in our packaging, for example. It's completely all the way sustainable. At the same time, or this actually helped us becoming one of the top 3 green European startups 2020, rewarded by Climate Launchpad from Climate Kick last year. And even this is not enough for us, so we go an extra mile by donating or by planting 1 tree for each order we get online. At the same time, we of course have all the necessary certifications, such as the vegan label or the EcoCert natural detergent label. If we move on, this is at the same time also an interesting market to be in at the moment, because of course consumer preferences are changing and are creating a completely new market at the moment. So first of all, also supported by COVID-19, consumers are more engaging with cleaning products and hygiene products in general, while at the same time, of course, sustainability matters. It not only matters, it's necessary. At the same time, there's also an e-commerce trend going. So if we look at the right graph here, this is the market, the total market globally for environmental household care products, which is growing at around 10.3% a year. And we at Skosh are approaching this market in 2 ways. Of course, we focus on sustainability first, but at the same time, we try to make it as easy as possible. So the convenience factors, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to be more sustainable and add it to their daily lives as well. If we look at our business model, we basically follow our 2-channel strategy. We'll focus on e-commerce. That's for us at the moment our primary channel with around 70% of the sales. And we see great returning customer rates. So around 30% of our customers are reordering within 3 months. Some are cleaning a little bit slower, so they come a little bit later. But generally, we see that the product is very much liked as there's barely any returns. At the same time we also sell through retail. For example, we have a pilot project right now with ICA in Malmö, and have some other channels such as Foodora or Pita Pot, which is in the Netherlands, a big e-commerce retailer. And what we can see from our traction is that now after the summer, people are picking up to clean again, and it's really great, a really great growth journey, which we are planning on expanding now with another funding round. This is basically the team. So there's 3 co-founders, Simon, who you met earlier, me and Max. We split it up into marketing, business development, and product. At the same time, as we have already raised a pre-seed round earlier this year, we have a good board and an advisory board. For example, one advisor is Patrick Levin, who is the CEO of Gekos Ullared. or some other board members here who are very valuable for us when it comes to retail and marketing. So yeah, at the end of the day, this is us, just a short introduction. We're now aiming to raise a seed round end of this year. However, there's no clear outline yet, but we would love to get a little bit of feedback from your side.
Yeah, and just generally, we kept it very as a broad overview. And if you're interested in more detailed KPIs, we can take that afterwards in a private meeting, maybe.
Thank you so much. I'll give the microphone to Fabian.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll definitely need some more cleaning products at home. Really good pitch. Maybe the first one is regarding defensibility and differentiation. We have seen a few similar value propositions out there. Like, what are your key differentiating factors, and how do you think you can sustain them over time?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we see competition popping up at the moment, and we see also that a bunch of competitors are copying us by quite a bit. But that comes back to what Tom said, that we know exactly what we are doing because we went all the way. So what we see with competitors, for example, that they purchase their tablets from a manufacturer from China, which is like pre-made. It's wrapped in like aluminum or plastic packaging, and you don't really know what the ingredients really are. How we differentiate here on the product level is that we really spend time with chemical experts from Lund University to develop this formula from scratch, and the IP is also proprietary of Skosh. So we know, for example, exactly what we are selling and what we can claim. At the same time, we don't get any plastic waste in our packaging, as we really commit to it, to find the right materials, maybe have a little bit longer supply chain, but then in terms of like getting rid of all the plastic waste, essentially. So that's in the product development, but also in our product range. So I mean, we now started with the cleaning tablets, and this is our hero product. And here we innovated by adding the probiotics, which was the world's first probiotic cleaning tablet, and it's already sold out almost. So it was a great successful launch. We now also offer plastic waste-free dishwasher tablets, and we will soon launch our own laundry powder, which is completely eco-friendly as well. So we also see like some differentiation in the product horizon. Yeah.
Cool. And how are the unit economics in this line of business? Like, what kind of gross margins can you achieve?
Yeah, so it's quite attractive, of course. It depends a little bit which channel you look at. So e-commerce, we have a gross margin above 80%. In retail, it's a bit lower. Depends always on the case, but generally what we can say is that we have positive unit economics also on the e-commerce side. So the first order is basically already profitable. And this is, of course, nice for us in order to scale now. Super important. What we have to mention here is that we're at the moment only focusing on Sweden. So we're doing some test campaigns here and there in other countries. However, this is only Sweden, where we now have a working working model with positive unit economics, which we hopefully also can apply now to other countries in order to scale up.
Cool. Last question for me is just on the probiotic cleaning. I have never heard about it before. So could you please explain what it is and why I should use it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was also us spending like 2 years in depth in the cleaning market now that we came across the trend. And how it works is basically that we have a small amount of microorganisms pressed into a specific tablet that we co-developed with Novozymes. They are based in Copenhagen, and we spent 1 year of really going all the way to, we say all the way all the time. But we really spend a lot of time in product development together with them. And how it works is that you just apply it to the surface, clean as you would normally do, but then like the bacteria stays on the surface and continuously degrades dirt over time up to 1 week. So you will see a result after cleaning immediately, but then it continues cleaning for a week, and then the surface or whatever you clean is microscopically clean. And that's, of course, a super interesting fact. And we were also kind of overwhelmed when we launched it together with some influencers. So it went better than we expected.
Cool. Cool. Sounds amazing. You have to tell me when it's restocked.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
I can continue, I think, on the probiotic questions. I think it's really interesting as well. I'm just thinking then, like, since you spent so much time developing this, like how much of a barrier is it for competitors, for example, to copy this probiotic cleaning tablet? Do you have any protection on it, or like how much of a barrier is it?
So generally, I think it's, since we are the first ones, it's at the moment we have like a first mover advantage, if you want. However, of course, if you have a little bit of money and time and the expertise to develop something similar, you could do it within a relatively short amount of time. We have thought about applying for a patent or going into the IP protection direction. However, for the moment, we have decided to not do it, as it would be too much resources spent on something which might still be copied in the long run, because then if you apply for a patent in our industry, for example, you will have to make public all the formulations and how the processing works and so on. And then it's of course difficult to defend that. But what for the moment works for us is that we are the first mover and we try to brand ourselves as the first mover as well. So we rather spend the money on the branding part here in this case, and trying to keep out competitors that way.
Yeah, cool. And my second question is more like general, but what do you see in the coming years now that, or in the coming year that, like, what will be your biggest challenges? Is it the team, growing the team, or the product, or scaling, or something else?
So I think on the product base, we have quite good manufacturers. So I mean, our goal is not to stay in the home care department, but also go into personal care at one point. So we want to have like the whole kind of product range that all has in common that we get rid of plastic waste and plastic packaging. So I think we have a rather straightforward plan here. I think the biggest challenge for me right now would be to build a team around this, hire the right people, establish the right structure in order to keep up with the growth. Because I mean, as you've seen in the graph, we are growing quite fast, and we are like a team of 5 full-times at the moment. And we just already see that when we continue this traction that we need to grow the team rapidly. And I think that's going to be a main challenge in our stage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one last question for Rita.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. Just a question regarding your value chain and also like the sourcing of materials. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how that relates with maybe other climate KPIs, maybe not plastic free only, but the CO2 emissions that you referred and so forth?
Yeah, so we have a contract manufacturer who is supporting us with the whole sourcing and producing. They're sitting in the Netherlands, so it's also everything made in the European Union. And for us, it was extremely important that we only use ingredients, for example, that are from natural origin. So we don't use anything that's petroleum based or that is super synthetic and toxic, but everything we use is from natural origin. And that's also why we are eligible for the EcoCert certification, which is rather rare in this industry. So that's for us the major benchmark. And then of course we for example did a CO2 emission tracking and testing of our full supply chain. And there's always a few things you can improve, but since the supply chain is primarily located in Europe, for us this is also a good advantage over, for example, competitors who produce overseas or in Asia.
So
very
maybe
interesting.
to follow this up, we are always optimizing what is possible in our stage, but as soon as we are growing, of course, there is a lot of optimization potential in our supply chain. But yeah, I mean, as you probably know, a startup, you have limited options, but we always do as best as we can in our current situation.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. So go to squash.se if you want more cleaning products. And we'll
Exactly.
move on to Lucas.
Can you guys hear me? And can you see my screen?
is good.
Okay. My name is Lucas Hammerstrom, and I'm the founder and CEO of Bottle. So as you can see on the monitor, you can see that there's bottles and there's cans, and we are a recycling company. But I wouldn't really call us a recycling company. I would call us a tech company that actually enables recycling. So let's see. Okay, so when it comes to recycling, the only problem with recycling is that there's not enough of it happening in the world. Every minute, 1 million bottles and 1 million cans are purchased around the world. And unfortunately, less than half of them end up not being recycled. So, but there is a solution that is popping up across the world in different markets. And we call this container deposit systems, or in Swedish, pantsystem. And we are very proud of our recycling system in Sweden. And 50 other markets around the world have basically come up with pretty much identical recycling systems to Sweden. They were first introduced in the 1970s, which is amazing. But what's not as amazing is that they haven't really changed in this time. So a recycling session is pretty much the same as it was 30 or 40 years ago. So you recycle your bottles or cans in a machine that prints out a receipt. You take the receipt and you stand in line, and then the cashier scans the receipt for you, and you get rewarded in coins or in-store credit. So we asked ourselves, is this a good user experience? No, it's a really bad user experience. It's actually a bottleneck when it comes to recycling, especially for the younger generation. If you look at, just how this is built up, it hasn't been optimized or even touched, in the last 40 years. So young people, they don't really want to wait in line, and they don't like cash because now we're living in a non-cash world. So this is a really bad user experience. So we thought to ourselves, how can we, without changing any of the crucial components, how can we digitize this and create an amazing user experience so more people will want to recycle? Because today, the people that consume the most bottles and cans recycle the least. So we created Bottle. So we're a software company, so we can connect our software to any recycling machine in the world. And when we do this, we enhance the user experience and we digitize the machine. So this is the new user experience. A user can easily find a recycling station that we are connected to. And instead of letting the cashier scan the receipt, they just do it themselves in the app. And the deposit gets transferred into their account. So they don't have to cash out every recycling session. They can actually save up for something that they really want. So in our store, we have an in-app store that features digital products that users can buy at a discount. So our goal here, it might be kind of sound crazy, but we are going to double the value of the container deposits everywhere. We are going to leverage the fact that, so Bottle is divided in two parts. First, we have the app. The app is the tool for the users to give them a better user experience. And then we also developed a portal. So the portal is made for the companies. So let's say I'm Spotify. I can log into this portal and create a new type of campaign that is called a recycling campaign. And then these users can buy this campaign with only recycled money. So companies, they create recycled campaigns and sell their products at a discount for money that only came from recycling. So this is a win-win situation, and we're leveraging the sustainability that companies, they want to be green, but they don't really want to pay for it. So we created a solution. So now they can be sustainable, acquire new users, and make money. So we want to change the game of recycling. When our user walk home from school or from work and they see a bottle or a can on the ground, we don't want them to think, oh, that's 10 cents lying there. No, we want them to think, ooh, that's 2 days of membership in my favorite game. Or, ooh, that's 500 meters of e-scooter credits that I'm going to be using tomorrow. So Bottle's core insight when it comes to the recycling industry is that the business doesn't have to end when the machine is sold, because for Bottle, that's just the beginning. So Bottle is soon 2 years old, and since then we have some interesting milestones. So we partnered with Returpack, and we are the only recycling solution to ever be approved by them. We have also received 2 rounds of funding from Vinnova, the Swedish innovation agency. We have tested a live version of our product at recycling machines, and over 80% of our testers said that they would become regular users. And this was around 100 people. We've also built an iOS and Android app that is fully functional, and also a web content management system. So anything in Bottle Store or in our app can be managed from a portal without touching any code. And then we've also built an analytics portal because we realized that today when somebody recycles in any country of the world, there's no way of knowing if it's a 7-year-old or a 70-year-old that make the recycling happen, or with which incentive. So this makes it so the Returpack and all other Returpacks in other countries are just blind. So what they have to do is they have to rely on very expensive advertising that is nationwide instead of making targeted efforts in areas that we can understand and help with. So very recently, we also partnered with our first grocery store in Sweden that have over 1,000 machines. And also in Bottle Store, we have over 200 brands and charities. So then our business model, it's a very simple thing. We're a platform. We take a percentage of everything that gets sold on our platform. So again, the users, they spend their deposits in exchange for products, and we take a cut of this. So approximately around 10% goes to Bottle. So in Europe, or in the world, the container deposit size is around 15 billion euros. That is completely untouched and unleveraged. And in Sweden, it's around 3 billion Swedish crowns every year that they're circulating. So we think that, you know, it's an interesting thing. Here's our team. This is the core team. It's me. I'm on both of the technical side and also the operational side. I guess my passion is just creating awesome user experiences. Then we have John, who's the CTO, and Luis, who also is doing some of the operational work with us. So we know for sure that we have the best recycling solution in the world, and we are looking for the right partner. I think it can be easy to find money, but we're looking for somebody that gets our mission. Things aren't really set in stone for us. Like, we just want to solve this problem. If we have to become a non-profit to do so, we will become a non-profit because we want this to be the new standard everywhere. And that's our company.
Thank you, Lucas.
Should I go with questions? Thank you so much, Lucas.
Yes.
Really interesting. Plastic recycling is a space that I've spent quite a lot of time in. One thing that we have seen is that in developed markets like Sweden, the actual recycling rates are quite high, like 80+%. If we look at PET bottles, like how much higher do you think you can get this with this kind of solution?
Oh, I think Sweden is the perfect incubator as a country to start. It's known in the recycling industry that recycling companies, they test their solutions in Sweden first because it's one of the most mature markets in the world. So if it works in Sweden, it will work in, for example, in other markets. And I think in Sweden we can easily push up over 90%. We've been struggling to reach our goal. So I think, yeah, for sure. Also, the people that we are targeting are the people that recycle the least. So we want to kind of flip that around. And also we spoke to, well, this is the theme when you look at countries, that the digital generation, they don't relate to the recycling system. So we would actually target the people that recycle the least today.
Cool. And then I wanted to ask also about the last thing you mentioned there about if you need, you could become a non-profit. Like why would you need to become a non-profit to build this business at scale?
So for example, there are recycling machine manufacturers, and you know, we have a plug-and-play solution that is ready to go. But if they end up not wanting to go with, we don't want to be seen as competition. If they, you know, we want to, yeah. I guess that's why. But also that we're just taking all the value that we can to give to our users. So we're hoping that we can just maximize the user experience. But I don't think this is going to be the most effective way of doing that to become a non-profit. I think you have some really interesting tools available to you if you are an explosive company. Yeah.
I 100% agree. Thank you so much.
Yes, Amanda, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was thinking, I think it was interesting. I think you showed a slide where you said that you have been interviewing a lot of people saying that they are interested in using this. And and you said that I think about 80% said that they would use it. I'm wondering how much have you actually like then validated with them that they're actually using it in the end, and how many of these people do you think are actually going to come back and use it again and again and again? Because I think that's usually the problem with these kinds of apps.
Sure. We're not live yet. So
Okay.
all we could do was to, make it seem like we were live.
Yep.
And then, we could survey them from that experience. But for example, one thing that you can do is, you want to make the payout as small as possible. So if somebody wants to buy Fortnite V-Bucks, instead of having the traditional limit at 100 kroner, now we'll take it down to 25 kroner. So it will, because we have to also consider that it needs to be rewarding to use the app. So we want to infuse dopamine into this in a way too. That's product design. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. How much have you investigated if the incentive is strong enough for them to use this, or that it's not only the first time? Because I think you can still do it without having the product live.
Yeah, well, I think that's our challenge. If they don't come back, we don't have good enough deals for them, or we don't have deals that they want to. So we are going to start with gamers, because we have we have a gamer background ourselves, so we really understand this specific group of people, and this just happens to be the group of people that the Tupac already focused this group with, like an esport talk show, DreamHack, and sponsoring their idols. So it's a really natural first group of people that we will target, because the people that really like their video game, they dream about it. It's the first thing they think about when they go to bed, and they can easily just start taking care of the family's bottles and cans and just become a recycling ambassador of the family. And we just need one in every family, and then we will have something really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Amanda. Rita, you have a
Yes, very interesting. And maybe I'm having less of a question and more of a comment, because recycling is an area that is very strong at Tetra Pak as well, not for PET bottles and cans, but for our Tetra Pak cartons. And actually, we've been working a little bit with incentives as well. So I think that is quite relevant to bring to the table as an inspiration. As an example, in Brazil, which is a country where there's almost no recycling systems, even in big cities. Normally, the recycling is done by individuals who maybe are homeless or coming from a low social economic status. And then they collect cartons or cans or bottles to basically trade off for money. And we've been working with incentives on here, like for instance, giving an extra incentive if people are collecting Tetra Pak cartons besides the money that they already would do. I was wondering as well, in your case, Lucas, I mean, it's a really great idea to have this platform where you can, more quickly give incentives to different people that are not recycling normally. Would you consider having something correlated with the livelihood? So for instance, you see as well here in Sweden, people collecting cans in the garbage because they want to, get the money out of it. Like, have you thought about any scenario there where it's more on the social impact side?
Yeah, I think this was one of the reasons why Bottle wasn't even started in the beginning. I think that's one of the things that I spoke to with Jenny when I first met her. This was this specific question. So like, how can we also, when we are disrupting this industry, how can we make sure that the people that rely on it are get also an upgraded user experience? So I think that there are ways of doing this. And I think also it came down to the question that, okay, well, I'm going to do it because otherwise someone else is going to do it, and they're not going to pay the same attention to this question as I am. So, for example, if some people they use bottle to feed themselves, they would get more to that. But then we've also, you can go and work with Svenska kyrkan, for example, that they can get special accounts that can be that are even more valuable, for example, or they can maybe get access to a resale market that if they buy a Fortnite gift card, they can resell this for Swish, like they can get actual money for this. So for them, it would just make it more valuable. But yeah, it comes down to less bottles will be left in the parks and this. So somehow we have, I mean, that's my,
Thank you so much, Lucas and Rita. And the last but not least, we have Yang. Feel free to start your presentation.
Thanks, Jenny. Let me share my screen. Did you allow me to share?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, yeah, it's working now. With only $33, we unlock solar energy for 1 billion entrepreneurs. Over the past 10 years, 54 million people became off-grid solar user using small solar pico products like solar lights, torch, and etc. Following this trends, people start to use solar for business purpose, revenue generating activities. But not all of those entrepreneurs could manage their solar transition because of the upfront cost barrier that they are suffering from. This is Rose, a women entrepreneur running a phone charging business in rural Kenya. A typical entrepreneur like Rose simply doesn't have enough cash to pay for the solar products. But if you could allow an entrepreneur like Rose to break down the cost into their weekly solar payments, such Rose could save her business income and pay less than what she would have spent on diesel generator, then you could unlock solar energy for 1 billion entrepreneurs. So how do we do that? We embed metering technology into the charging station, where Rose could make prepayments to activate the products and access power. Once the payment is run out, the product is deactivated automatically until the new payment is made again. We also offer Rose access to the web platform where she could track her business income, solar payments, and also withdraw cash anytime. We're measuring our customer benefits from 3 perspectives. Economically, Rose has gained additional income of around $200 per year during this solar transition. Using this money, Rose secured the school fee for one of her sons. She's a mother of 5. And by switching from diesel generator to solar energy, Rose managed to avoid CO2 emission 27 kg per unit per year. We started our operation in Kenya last year, launched our new version products in July. I just came back from there. So at the moment, we're working with 30 paying customers from Kitui and Homa Bay. And Rose is definitely not alone. Globally, we've identified over 1 billion entrepreneurs suffering from the same issue, just like Rose. And in our beachhead markets, Kenya, there's over 4 million of them. And this is only for the first module that we're talking about for phone charging entrepreneurs. Using this proven business model, 1% market share, 30% margin per unit, we are planning to generate revenue of 22 million at year 5. Today, we're starting from the charging station as the first module, but using the same platform, this could be applied for different appliances, such as solar water pump, irrigation system, solar fridge, and etc. But for the first 3 years, we're going to focus on the first module for the charging station, starting from Kenya. After the current validation, we're planning to expand in the 3 targeting region and reach 2,500 customers by the end of 2022, by the end of 2023, and start to look at the second module. For that, we're raising 5 million SEK to reach this goal. My name's Yang. I am the founder of Mbegu Solar. I have a background in sustainable innovation, started to work in Kenya since 2015 with rural communities and operations. Astern joined us earlier this year. She is the one in charge of sales, has been working in microfinance sector and sales for over 18 years. Kiefer joined us as a product lead. He has been working with Mkoba, which is one of the leading player in off-grid solar sector in Eastern Africa for around 7 years as team lead. So she joins Mbegu, truly believe the unique business model behind the PayGo solution. And of course, our advisor boards, mostly coming from the Nordics and Eastern Africa, sharing with the team their industrial experiences and helping with the company strategies. At Embegu Solar, we believe in sustainable impact. So not only creating something impactful, but making it last for long using innovation and technologies. And we're doing so by empowering local entrepreneurs with the sustainable technology and payment infrastructure that they need to grow their business, sustain their community, with the aim of impacting billions of people's lives in emerging markets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yang. Fabian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yang. Really, really interesting and really very much needed. My first question is a little bit on the financing side, because I guess you will have to finance all of these charging stations. So first question is, how do you plan to finance the capital intensity this will have if you scale fast? And then second question on what is the payback period? So how fast do you pay back the charging stations that you lend out, or not lend out, but that you provide?
Yeah, let me jump into the backup slides to give you a bit overall picture. So this is how the customer access the pay-go, what we call pay-as-you-go pricing. So the units, we sell it around 540 per units. And from the platform, they could make initial payments, the upfront payments, 33. And then they take the loan from MFI, microfinance institution, or cycle groups for around $500. And every month, the income goes directly to our platform where the money would be distributed automatically. So 30% to the loan provider at the weekly solar payments. And 50% the entrepreneur, they could withdraw as they're earning. And then the rest 20% goes to Embegu Solar for the software subscriptions fee. Cool. So at the moment, we deal with both the hardware design and also the software. So we are testing through partnership. This is one of the example. So that's a community self-help group. So what they do, they have different programs providing loan for those entrepreneurs, like table banking, microfinance. Normally 10 people form a group. Each one of them puts 1,000, for example, on the table. And then one of the member, they could take 10% without paying it back as a benefits. And the rest parts would be taken by loan to all of the rest members, and they pay 10% interest. So that's money is growing over time. So that's how those community group is working to provide those entrepreneurs the loans. So we work together with those community groups. Yeah, so that's basically how they finance it. That's for the current phase. We are also considering of partnering with existing manufacturings, as for example, the water pump. That's more like that's easier to find similar existing hardware providers in the markets. So there are different ways we could address that.
Great. And then my second question is on how do you plan to...
Second question?
So now I think it's... Yang, are you there?
Sorry, could you say that again? Yeah, could you say that again?
Yeah, so my second question is more on the go-to-market strategy. So how do you plan to market yourselves in these communities, and how do you plan to go to market at scale?
Yeah, so for initial phase, we work with local sales agents as our partner. This is one of the examples. So this guy in the picture, called Simon, she's also our customer and also local sales agents. So normally they have a physical store. They start to try the product initially, and afterwards they make referrals, and they also take commission, access our platform to monitor and grow their business in that way. So for initial phase, that's basically how we enter the markets. But to scale it, I think we're gonna still work with larger group of distributors where they manage those sales agents in different geographic locations.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question from Amanda and Rita?
Yeah, I actually think that I got a lot of my questions answered, but I think one thing that I'm thinking about is, of course, like the units. I think you touched a bit on that, but like where are the units like manufactured? Are you planning to do it locally to support the local market there as well, or what's the plan for the manufacturing?
Yeah, so the current the production is done in Kenya. And we mostly source different components and we build it in a way and also embed with our software, which is built in Sweden. So that's how we are currently doing that. But if we could find manufacturer partners, then we don't need to handle that part by ourselves, which is also more scalable in the long run when it comes to maintenance and everything like that. Yeah. So it's essentially a payment platform. And right now we're still doing the manufacturing part because we're validating it. We want to have that deeper understanding how things is working locally.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And Yang, I loved your idea and your project. I'm wondering, just a small question, in terms of a technical aspect, like, do you see any limitation on the solar power that you can harness from the solar power that you can harness in relation to, you know, the capacity of the charging station or anything? Like, do you see any limitations in there?
Oh, definitely. I think that's one of the feedback we got from the grounds. So this is a list of things that we're currently working on for product modification and improvement based on the customer feedback. I think the most important feedback we got here is how could we modify the product in the way that could create more value to the customer. So they could charge not only for phones, they could also charge torch, lights, radio, you know. So the more they could generate, also we could grow our business in a more scalable way. So we are currently making some of the changes of the design of this hardware station to allow them also charge different devices. So I think that could help them double their revenue per day. So that's one thing. Another thing, I think it's about security. Our customer, they are super creative. They could try different ways to avoid the payments. So instead of controlling the locker, we should control their usage of the power. So now we're also making that modification. So basically, to get back to your question, I think solar panel is not really the solution to the problem. The problem here is how to help them manage their upfront barrier, which is more like a payment issue, and we tie that to the most important parts, which might be battery in this case, to control their usage in relation to their payments, and also secure the payment for other stakeholder in this value chain, like distributor manufacturers.
Yeah. Sounds sounds an interesting problem to solve. Best of luck for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for everybody joining us today. And is coming to the end of the session. And I'm just wondering, Fabian, is there any final words or advice for the entrepreneurs here with us today?
No, just a big encouragement. Really, really nice to meet you all, and really interesting to also hear the companies pitching. It's can feel that it's a lot going on in Skåne. So looking forward to keeping a good dialogue and also seeing more of you in the future.
And how should the founders reach out to you?
You can reach me either on LinkedIn or via my email, which is fabian@norrsken.vc. Feel free to reach out just with questions or with anything else.
Thank you so much. Are there any final questions from the founders and the co-hosts today? Awesome. Cool. It seems that everybody is very clear. But thank you so much for joining us today. This is the end of the session. And for the audience who are still with us, feel free to reach out in the chat session here if you want to connect with the founders, if you're looking for partners, or buying some sort of solutions from the founders, feel free to reach out to me and I will connect you to the founders. And thank you for everybody's time.
Thank you all.